All right, welcome to Webinar Wednesday. It is brought to us by the Foundation for Facial Aesthetic Surgery. We've got two great presenters today, Ryan Miller of Etna Interactive and Sam Peak of Incredible Marketing. I'd also like to mention that for attending today's webinar, you will receive $75 off the registration for the FFAS Symposium in 2019. It will be live for the next 7 days, and it is in conjunction or combination with the early registration discount of $200. So it is some substantial savings. If you like what you hear today, please register and come to see us in New Orleans for more. Our first presenter today will be Ryan Miller. Ryan is the founder of one of the aesthetic industry's most respected online marketing firms, Etna Interactive. He shares over 15 years of experience serving hundreds of aesthetic clinics in North America. Ryan's presentation is on service, is titled Service, the Hottest Thing in Online Marketing. Ryan, I'm passing it over to you.
Excellent. TK, I'll be watching for that screen pass. And just you can confirm for me, since I can't hear our audience, that are you able to see my primary screen there?
Just a second. I am. Yes.
All right, guys. Well, I personally lead with a small apology to our audience today. If at some point in the next 15 minutes I start sounding like an 80-year-old smoker, I'm getting over a bit of laryngitis, and I'm doing my best to maintain my voice today. So, this is something for me that is a little bit of a soapbox issue. Over the last maybe 5 or 6 months, as a part of the regular course of our client relationships, we've spent more and more time listening to recordings of phone calls between potential patients in the clinics that we serve, and really zeroing in on some of the core issues that we see in deficiencies in staff training in the areas of customer service. And I think some of you are asking, like, wait a minute. You're a web marketing guy. What do you care about this stuff? And the reality is there's been a lot of changes over the last, year and a half that are bringing together this intersection between online marketing and customer service in ways that are in some ways predictable, in some ways unpredictable, but in all of those ways are for practices that are exceptional at customer service. They're amplifying the performance of their online marketing, and for those that are falling short, it's dragging down digital marketing performance. As TK mentioned, I've been around for a while. I've been working in the area of online marketing for aesthetic medicine now. This is almost next year will be my 20th year, and we really are focused on not just how do we get more more folks on a website, how do we get more inquiries from the site, but all the way through, how do we get more patients inside the clinic? And the realization, the acknowledgement of what's at stake is this: service today has wound its way into the middle of almost everything we do online. And let me explain. And hopefully we don't need to debate this. Hopefully for everybody who's on the call with us today, you understand intrinsically that your online reputation matters, that reviews that appear on sites like Yelp, Healthgrades, RealSelf, Google, that actually has a direct influence on the consumer, because every point of data that we've ever seen come out says that your reputation ultimately matters to patients. And even if they're not actively looking for it, they can't help but stumble into it today as they're searching for you on Google. We see data come out from organizations like RealSelf. They identifying that the clinics with the most reviews, no big surprise here, they're getting the most inquiries. In many cases, 40 times more inquiries, those clinics that are in the top 10% of the number of reviews received, 40 times more inquiries than those that are in the bottom 10%. So quantity definitely matters, but it's not just quantity as well. It's also the substance. I think if we all kind of bust out our mobile phones right now, we bring up Google and you pick a service that you care about, a procedure, search for it in combination with the city in which your clinic is located. What you're going to find is that the first results after Google Ads is the map pack, the map and the 3 to 5 local listings. And what we know today is that both the quantity and the words and phrases that are present inside of the reviews that you receive natively to Google, meaning they're actually written by Google users on their Google accounts, that those directly influence whether or not you show up and how often you show up inside that map pack. And let's consider what we're seeing on our mobile phones, ladies and gentlemen. The majority of the visits to your site today are now on mobile devices, and the first thing that we're seeing after those ads on those mobile devices is that map. So that definitely matters. We know that sites like Facebook and Yelp, do they care about your customer service? Absolutely. In the announcement that was made this January of this year about the change in the Facebook algorithm, how often your content is going to be displayed, they were very clear that things like the frequency and the speed of your service for people who are inquiring, both inside your newsfeed and privately in the back end, that's directly influencing how much visibility you get for free. So, take bad care of Facebook's users, and Facebook's saying, hey, I'm going to take bad care of you. And in both cases, Facebook and Yelp, using them as examples, when you're using their messenger platforms, they're actively showing the consumer before they type in a message to you how fast they should expect a response based on your past behavior. And if you're one of those poor, sad clinics that is broadcasting to the world on Yelp that you can expect a response within a month, of course that consumer is going to move on and they're not going to communicate with you as well. So the degree to which that you're providing exceptional service inside the digital arena, these players care enough about it that they're essentially trying to shame clinics into doing a better job. I think most interestingly, in July of this year, Google made a major announcement about their quality review guidelines, their QRG, and identified that clinics with reputation problems are almost universally derived from service issues, not from clinical outcomes. In a study that we did a couple of years ago, we found that aesthetic clinics are 8 times more likely to get service complaints than anything to do with clinical outcomes. That reputation problems and things like unresolved Better Business Bureau complaints, that those could actually drag you down in Google's 10 organic rankings. Right? And so if you're doing a bad job in the real world, Google's saying like, why would we want to send our searchers there? Or if you're neglecting reputation, if you're neglecting consumer complaints on these major respected platforms like the Better Business Bureau, that's ultimately going to hurt you as well. And so the takeaway, the what's at stake, what we need to understand as leaders inside of our clinics is how you help those patients on the journey from an inquiry to becoming a patient. Today, it might ultimately be, well, I'd say as important here, but it might ultimately be more important than what you do once they're inside the treatment room. So what do we do about this? My hope is for the next couple minutes, so I want to run you through some questions and some suggestions about projects that you can undertake between now and, say, the end of January to begin to focus effort and energies on your reputation and get that service house in order. First question you have to ask yourself is, how are we managing reputation? And let's acknowledge, if we rolled back together 10 years and we had that dissatisfied patient who was disillusioned by a visit to their office, what did they do? They sort of quietly snuck away, maybe at a cocktail party with a friend they shared, with just a few people, what a bad experience they had with your office. If their phone call wasn't handled well, they hung up and just didn't call back. You got to acknowledge today's patient has a bullhorn, right? They're given a platform on sites like RealSelf, Yelp, Google, Healthgrades, Vitals, RateMDs. They're given a voice, and that they can do so much more damage to the practice today if they're not treated well. So what do we need to be doing as practice leaders? Well, first you need to ensure that you have a system in place to listen and capture feedback. It might be one of the commercially available tools that's focused in reputation. It could be something as simple as a form that you have a patient fill out after their encounter with your office. But you need to be collecting and analyzing that data and actively looking, how do we improve on that patient's experience so that we can deliver a better experience the next month over? We ultimately want to help your team make a connection, the connection between the service that they provide on the phone, at that initial patient encounter, at the patient checkout, and of course in the treatment room, to the success of the clinic. And the narrative looks like this. If we fall down on service, if we have a bad day, we take that patient and we leave them with the bad impression. They take that bad impression and they leave it online, and they leave it in the minds of hundreds or thousands of potential patients for now and for the rest of time. And it's not to say that we can't have a bad day, but that we have to understand that too many of them might threaten our ability to be successful and profitable in the future. And we need to align our training and our incentives to avoid those bad days and the impact they have on patients. We do want to encourage patients to share their experiences online. We hear this all the time from clinics. Oh, nobody leaves a review except for the disgruntled patient. And statistically speaking, that's not true. Most clinics actually have a really good reputation, and it could be even better if we were providing the encouragement and in many cases the tools to motivate and make it easy for patients to share an experience online. And there's some controversy here. If you want more information on this because you think, I can't do this because of HIPAA, you're wrong. You can do it. You do need to be careful, but we do advise that you respond to all reviews, positive and negative, so that both the patients and potential patients understand that you're listening, that you care, and that you're involved in the conversation. How do you address service recovery? Because let's face it, you're going to have a bad day. Something's going to go wrong. Famously, the Ritz-Carlton has empowered everybody all the way down to the gardener on their property with a $2,000 per patient per day budget to make their patients happy. Now, for business owners, this is usually where they get really nervous, right? Where all the muscles tighten up. It's like, oh, I could never do that. But the reality is most problems never require a $2,000 solution. They might require a little bit of creative thinking, the patient's beverage of choice, or a simple apology card and acknowledgement that we're really sorry things didn't go right. Interestingly, I've got a friend who went through the Ritz-Carlton Institute, received their training, and she said the most commonly issued consolation for a mistake that was made to a dissatisfied guest was a plate of chocolate-covered strawberries and a personal note. Clearly not a $2,000 spend. But we have to step back and ask ourselves, the lesson learned there is things go better, things go quicker when our team is empowered to maintain patient satisfaction. We just need to give them a framework. What is the front desk person allowed to do? What is your patient coordinator allowed to do? What is an esthetician or nurse injector allowed to do? When they're dealing with a patient who's dissatisfied with a service issue, of course, that's different than if we're dealing with a concern about a clinical outcome. Articulate, if you can, the process, and then train the team on how to escalate concerns really effectively without having patients feel like they're being dismissed. Oh, I'm going to need to talk to my manager sounds very differently than, ma'am, I care so deeply about what's happening right now. Will you allow me a moment to get our manager because I think you deserve their attention? Right? How do we train that skill set into the team so that we can de-escalate issues by bringing in more senior levels of our staff? And ultimately, we want to take those service mistakes and we want to celebrate them inside of our business. This is something we try to do here inside of our own company. Mistakes are going to happen. And what makes us good, what makes any company good, is how they respond to those mistakes. And ideally, we'd love to make a mistake once. Let's learn from it, change our process, documentation, and training so that we don't run into that same mistake again. Now, when we did that analysis that I mentioned on what patients complain about, communication was the number one issue that patients complain about. And I understand why when I see job descriptions like this. This is an actual job description for a front desk clerk. This happens to be in a Beverly Hills office. And this person is expected to greet patients, check them in, answer phones, run the schedule, keep a detailed record of tracking where patients are coming from, reply to emails, follow up with previous patients, manage leads, right? And I can go on and on and on. And the pay on this, the skill level that we're hiring into, is starting at about $14 an hour. To put this in perspective, in 1990, when I was in high school, I worked at Lucky Store. It's a grocery store, number 76 in the Bay Area. And I was making $16 an hour. And I had exactly 4 responsibilities: put food in bags, put bags in carts, help carts to cars, bring carts back to the front of the store. Right? And we've set this very tall expectation very often for the person that is the least trained and often least compensated member of our team. And what we see in the most successful clinics today is they're rethinking that, examining call and email handling, and ensuring that there's enough staffing and skill to cover the expectation and the volume of inquiries coming from patients. They're investing in training and developing their team, and they're providing clear protocols, not necessarily scripts, but protocols and the software to take the gaps in communication and bridge them. Gaps like, what happens when one of our team is gone for a day? Are all patient communications locked up in their individual personal email account? Or do we have a system or software that allows us to distribute the responsibility for communications between the team? And finally, I want to leave you with the thought of stepping back and asking, how are we architecting wow? I'll share experience here, probably the biggest wow I've ever had in a travel experience. A couple of years ago with one of the prominent aesthetic societies, they run an annual a meeting that happens on a cruise ship. This happened to be on the Silver Sea line, and it's probably the travel story I've told the most. It was a premium travel experience, and I had a butler in my room. And it was nice enough that when I arrived, they asked me what scent I wanted for all of my toiletries, that they came with a pillow menu. But what blew me away was during the day while I was out on excursions, each day they surprised me with a little special touch. On the first day I came back, and all of the sunglasses except for the pair I were wearing had been carefully cleaned and wrapped in an individual branded Silver Sea lens cleaning towel. The next day, they had pulled my luggage out from underneath the bed, and they'd cleaned the luggage with they specified in a little card an eco-friendly solvent to remove all those nasty little airline stickers that had been all over the bags. Those little moments were the kind of thing that made me go, wow, this is really exceptional. Because we have to ask ourselves if we're hoping and we're praying that it's word of mouth that grows our business, right? Because we don't want to be dependent on marketing. We want patients bringing their friends. We have to ask ourselves, when was the last time I told a friend about a really average experience? Now, not very often, right? We tell them about those wow moments. So architecting wow is about stepping back and looking for ways that you can deliver specifically repeatable but remarkable service to activate those word of mouth. And for those of you that are into this, the marketers that are on the call, I want to recommend a book. It's called Triggers. It's by Jay Baer and Daniel Lemon. Great book to get you thinking about where are those special little moments in our patient encounters that we might leave a patient with a wow experience that amplifies word of mouth. Because you guys, you know what? It's all marketing, right? We all know that you have a budget for marketing, but you may not today have a budget for service and service enhancement inside the practice. And so as we're thinking about 2019, I think despite the fact that I'm a marketing guy, I want to encourage you to step back and think about the service equation inside of your practice as an extension of your marketing and something that needs an investment as well. Because we all know this number, we've seen this over and over again, that it's roughly 7 times more expensive to attract new patients than it is to retain the ones that we have and to get them talking to their friends about what we do. For those that feel like you can benefit from a copy of the deck, and TK, on that note, I'm ready to turn it back over to you and to Sam. But if you would like a copy of the slides, I'm happy to send them to you without any picture obligation. Just drop me an email at ryan@etnainteractive.com, and I'll get these over so you can talk about them inside your office and with your team.
Wow, yeah, thanks, Ryan. That was amazing. We will do a follow-up email with contact info, and we will be posting the video to the FFAS website so that if someone missed it, they can see it. Also, if you have any questions, we will be doing a short Q&A at the end. So go ahead and submit your questions in the Q&A panel, and we'll have the presenters answer those at the end of the presentation. All right, it's now time for our next presenter, who is Sam Peak of Incredible Marketing. Sam is the founder and executive officer of Incredible Marketing. Since 2008, Incredible Marketing has helped over 1,000 practices grow through digital marketing. Today, he'll be sharing some of his insight in his presentation titled Smaller Audience, Bigger Returns, Building a Social Media Brand. All right, Sam, you're on.
Thanks for that. And Ryan, wow, what an awesome presentation. Taking things beyond what it is that we do as digital marketers and applying them to the real world in the office to enhance what it is that we do, and really, really compelling and interesting. And after this webinar, I'm going to have to hit you up and get some more details on that cruise ship, because that sounded pretty incredible, and I'm sure other people are pretty interested in that as well. So let's just get right into it. And as TK mentioned, one of the things I'm really interested in is not only giving this talk and talking to you guys a little bit about how smaller audiences actually lead to bigger returns, but afterwards really hearing your guys' questions and what's compelling and interesting for you guys in terms of marketing, digital marketing right now, and where everyone is at. Because we want to make this fun and interactive, and not only just give you guys the information and things that are on the top of our minds, you know, Ryan and myself, but we also want to hear from you. So by all means, please do that. So just like with Ryan, I'm also battling a little bit of being under the weather, have a little bit of a cold. So if you hear me sniffle a little bit, I'm sorry in advance. For those of you that don't know, I'm Sam Peak. I am the CEO of Incredible Marketing, and we are a digital agency in the healthcare space. We have clients in over 20 countries, and for offices. We specialize in this space particularly, and we look at things from a very different approach as Ryan does, which is not only the digital marketing efforts that we provide, but how to be unique, how to be different, and ultimately, at the end of the day, how to succeed by being yourself. And so a lot of what we're going to talk about today is how do you go about doing that? What are the first steps? And one of the things I want you guys to understand and really think about is, being bigger isn't always better. At least when it comes to social media, when you're looking at fans and followers and wanting to increase and really looking for, that kind of really large growth, that footprint, that those numbers that really say, hey, I am someone special. Well, you are someone special, but we're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. First off, really what we want to know is, why do we win at something and why do we fail? Or how do we win at something and how do we fail? And that's really what we're going to kind of explore a little bit today. But we fail when we end up being reactive, or we compare ourselves to others, when we fail to stick to a strategy, and we fail when we try to appeal to the masses. And I think each one of these we're going to talk about a little bit, but many of the issues that we come across, that I come across in this industry, is when I get the email or the phone call and they say, hey, Sam, Dr. Smith down the road is doing this. We need to start doing this. Or, Dr. Smith has 500 followers, 1,000 followers, 5,000 followers. Why am I not there? That all of a sudden leads you to wanting to move away from your strategy. You're chasing the shiny object as opposed to, in actuality, sticking with the plan that's going to set you apart, the plan that's going to emphasize who you are and how you are going to be different. And then all of a sudden, you're afraid of missing that one patient that might be coming through the net. So you say, hey, we need to go after everyone and we need to attract everyone. We have to be everything to everyone. And that's how we fail. And then, of course, one of the most classic ways is we try to throw money at a situation, right? And you can't do that nowadays. You can't just throw money at a situation and not know what's going on. And whether that's your digital marketing or whether that's your front desk person that Ryan was just talking about, no matter what you do, if you don't have a plan in place to succeed, throwing money at it isn't going to fix it. It's not going to make things better. So what we really need to do is we need to learn. We need to educate ourselves, educate our staff, make sure that the vendors we work with are educated, knowledgeable, professional, and they know what's going on as well. So conversely, how do we win? You win when you know who you are. You win when you stick to that strategy and you have a strategy. You win when you don't compare yourself to others. And you win especially when you're not afraid to cast a smaller net. So key elements to building a social media brand, and what we're going to talk about today, is how to defend your standards, how to build this strategy, and how to bring value and authenticity. Now, first off, as much as I love Michael, Dr. Miami, I hear this all the time, and I'm approached several hundred times a day, it feels like, not really, but a lot, and I'm sure Ryan gets this too, and others get this. You know what? What's his secret sauce? What is Dr. Miami doing that's so special and unique? I want to be like that. And at the end of the day, that is not what you should be saying. That's not what you should be coveting. What you should be saying is, I want to be me, the most authentic and real me possible, because that will attract the type of patient that I'm looking for. So, number one, let's start with defending your standards. What does that mean? The standards that you set are your first touch point. So you need to create an identity that supports your standards and appeals to the interests and the desires of your target audiences, which ultimately should align with who you are and what you are about. So how does that work? If you have philanthropic things that you are interested in, discuss it. If you hold certain perspectives on things that obviously aren't crazy controversial, then share those. If there's something that you're doing community based, work on that. Your first touch point has to be the standards that you support. So if you are not that person that dances through an OR, if you're not that person that wants to share his personal or her personal life in social media all that extensively, that's okay. But stick to those. If that is what you hold to be intrinsically valuable to you, don't waver from that just because it seems to be cool or trending elsewhere for you to do so. And obviously, this almost goes without saying nowadays, but it's still such a tricky point, which is never compete on price. Because competing on price, as we know, it's never a race to the top, it's only a race to the bottom. And Australians have such a great saying about this. They say it's always a race to a $5 haircut, which is you're trying to get down to beat the lowest price and do the most amount of work, when in all honesty, for what it is that you as surgeons and aesthetic providers do, you don't want to be faster. You don't want to have more volume. What you need to do is provide exceptional levels of like not only service, but also care and technical ability to what it is that you're actually handling. That is what people want to pay for. So competing on price in and of itself doesn't mean that you can't be competitive on price, but it means that that should not be the primary focus of what it is that you're focusing on. And when you start to believe in your prices, other people will as well, because new patients will flock to your practice. People want to be associated with high quality practices. And if you believe that you have the value that you are providing to your potential patient, price isn't going to matter. It is the value. And I was in a conversation just recently with a couple of international doctors. I was at the ISAPS meeting in Miami, and we had a doctor from Europe and one from Australia, a couple from North America, and they were talking about pricing. And they started getting into the conversation of their local competitors, people that were doing the same similar services that they measured themselves up to. It's the measuring stick, and they said, well, such and such charges this amount for a facelift. And someone else says, well, I don't know how he's doing it. I could never get away with that. I could never charge that. Essentially, what this doctor was saying is, I'm not worth that. The key difference here probably isn't skill or training. It's probably not even in marketing. At the end of the day, the one person who thinks that they are more valuable is the one setting it. And at the end of the day, they're still finding people that are willing to pay for those services and for that time. One of the other things that we are sometimes so afraid to do is to actually turn away patients. We've worked so hard with companies like Aetna or Incredible or others out there in the market to generate these patients that are sending us emails and phone calls. And all of a sudden, we've gone through the consultation with them. And what are we going to do? I don't know if this person's the best candidate. Maybe they are. I heard from them that potentially they didn't like working with their other surgeon, and they had some other treatments and it didn't go so well. These are red flags. And the most sophisticated of practices are going to understand that these red flags is something that you need to be keenly insightful and understand that this may present a problem down the road. And again, this might also tie back to what it is that you stand for. If this person is incongruent with who you are as a surgeon and the results you provide, if what they are looking for is opposed to how you want to present yourself, if they want a very fake look and you try and hang your hat on completely natural results, then maybe this isn't the right fit for you. And I think that too often, especially at the beginning of one's career in this industry, You are so reluctant to turn away from patients, and that will transcend because that bad experience, like Ryan mentioned, will trickle down in all the review sites. And again, even if it turns out okay, but even if it's misaligned, they're never going to talk about that average results. So, two, how do we go about actually building a strategy? And I want everyone to kind of say it with me. I'm not afraid of casting a smaller net. At the end of the day, this homogenous approach to wanting to market yourself tends to never be successful. You know, when I speak to someone at one of the mini shows I speak at, or, if I receive an email and I hear, okay, what's your demographic? And they say 18 to 75. No, that's not really your demographic. Let's get more specific. Who is this person that you are trying to attract? What does this patient ultimately look like? This requires confidence on your part to close this world down, to not be wanting to attract everyone, to not wanting to market to everyone. Confidence is not saying they will like me. No, that's not how that works. Confidence is saying, I'll be fine if they don't. It's okay if they don't want to choose me as their surgeon. I'm okay with that. We're not a fit. Know precisely who it is that you are tracking, who it is that you are targeting, and who you want as your patients at the end of the day. And let that trickle down to your staff to say, hey, this is the kind of patient we want. And I don't need you to close every single potential consult that walks through that door. It is more effective for us if you don't. So always aim for quality and never quantity. Trying to get posts up in social media 1, 2, 3, 4 times a day um, isn't how you should be measuring a successful social media campaign. Instead, it should be, what does the quality look like? How many comments did I receive? How much engagement is there? Am I producing quality information that people care about? Social media is about people. And so I often hear this, Sam, how often should I post? That's a tough one. That one is really going to depend on you. I'm going to answer with something like, well, how much good content do you have? How much good content can we help produce for you? And what are your goals that you're looking to achieve? I had someone come up to me just recently. This was in the past 3 or 4 weeks, and they were talking about how they were managing social media in-house themselves, and the doctor was even engaged. I started looking through their Facebook page. They were averaging 5 to 7 posts per day. And obviously the engagement was almost nil because it was content saturation. And it was the doctor, and it's like, hi, I woke up this morning. And then him posting again, oh, I'm at the gas station and I'm getting a soda. And then he made it to the office and he's like, hi, this is what it looks like when you walk in through the front desk of my office. Now, this is me putting on my lab coat. And it was literally that mundane. And it was not understanding how people really engage. Now, stipulated, this doctor didn't have the most social media acumen I've ever come across. He was very new to this and he was learning what this was all about. But at the end of the day, you have to say, look, it's not about me waking up from the second that I wake up until the second I go to bed, making sure that I'm attached to my phone. It's, is there one time today where I can come across something really interesting, fascinating? Maybe it's just fascinating and interesting to me, but something I want to share. That's what should guide your content production. That's what it should start to look like. Stay small. Rather than having followers from all over the world that'll never ever come out to you as patients, really try and stay localized. It's going to help you be successful. I often tell someone, look, it's so much better to have 4 or 5,000 followers that are hyper localized to you and that are potential patients that you can reach, and that their circles of interest, those people in that community that you can reach out to, as opposed to 50,000 dispersed equally throughout the United States. It's not going to help your bottom line. And at that point, you're only doing social media for vanity reasons, not necessarily from an ROI perspective. So if that's what you're doing, make sure that you understand that that is the reason that you're doing it. Make sure you choose your primary social media channels. This goes far beyond an ROI analysis and much closer to what I call a VOI analysis, which is your value on your investment, and that investment being your time. If you're not seeing an impact with your 27 followers on Twitter, don't worry about posting 10 times a day. At the end of the day, if Instagram is really, really hot and it's making a lot of sense because your demographic is there and they're not so much on Facebook, that's okay. Spend more time and effort on one over the other. Understand that, especially since your biggest investment is time. And if you're not working with an agency and you're not prioritizing things well, you could very well be spinning your wheels. Really connect with your patients, despite their gender, their age, their background. Guide yourself by the connection that they possibly make. You never really want to judge a potential book online by its cover. Maybe someone's reaching out for their mother or their father. Maybe someone's reaching out for their son or their daughter. Maybe, a man is asking for his wife for the holidays. It's easy to want to respond to Anne, who is the 45-year-old, white professional female that has the disposable income in your market, that has a question that comes in through instant messenger. But potentially you might see a message that comes in from someone who's 75-year-old male. And maybe that question gets deprioritized because, again, we only have so much time. I would caution you against that because you never really know who they're looking for or why they're looking for. And maybe that avatar photo or that profile complete isn't what it's cracked up to be. Maybe there's someone else behind that screen. Build an organic audience. Use inspirational quotes now and then and before and after case studies when you can. Some people would say that this is a little bit of filler content, but that's okay, especially on the before and after case study stuff. People want to see that. People want to see people's journeys. They want to see from the very beginning until the very end. But again, make sure that this aligns with who you're targeting, what you're targeting, and why this ties into your practice from a strategic perspective. And then last but not least, bring value and authenticity. And really what this boils down to is what is the business that you're really in? And you have to say, I'm in the business of transformation. I am in the business of happiness. I am in the business of confidence. And I think that by starting to tell yourself every day, this is who I am and this is what I do, this is why I'm doing this, that automatically leads back to being able to produce and publish some of the best content online. And then I get asked this, how do I promote my services if I shouldn't be promoting at all? And this, quite honestly, is a tough one. At the very beginning, when your practice is not very mature, you want to get specials out, or you want to talk about promotions or your events or your open houses. But there's a fine line, especially in social media, where people really don't want to be sold to because it's intrusive. People don't want to hear sale, 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 even if it is Black Friday, even if it is in December right before Christmas. There's a threshold to how much people are willing to tolerate. So make sure that you come across in a way that ultimately is not too pushy. There's no way that out of all of your posts, more than 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 should be related to a promotion, an event, a special. Really focus on experiences, transformations. what people can expect in terms of that overall premier experience when they come see you. Exactly what Ryan talked about. That Ritz-Carlton-esque type service. The transformation and the journey of another one of your patients. They're really the hero, that hero's journey. And that's something that people can gravitate towards. Not buy one, get one 50% off. And again, that has its place. But if that is the main message that you're putting out there, then you will only attract those people that are looking for that. Obviously, create unique content by not over promoting. Always think about providing value over just price. Really focus on answering questions and solving problems with the content that you put out there. People have questions and they want to know, oh, if it applies just to me, maybe it applies to others as well. How many times do you hear this in the consult? How many times have you, as your front office staff, heard these questions? Answer other people's questions, and social media is a great forum for you to utilize that. Definitely rely on testimonials. Talk about other people's great experiences and allow other people to ambassadorize for you. That is going to help push your brand beyond what you could do by yourself. Whenever possible, really collect user submitted photos and encourage people in social media to tag you, to use you, to post their photos. Yes, it's going to be tough. And yes, there's going to be a lot of clients, a lot of patients, a lot of people you interact with that don't want to do that. And that's okay. But when you find that one, that two, that five, that 10, really join in the journey with them and say, thank you. This is amazing. Tag me on this. I'm so happy with your results. That means that they're in it with you. Seth Godin recently advocated for the highest and most sophisticated level of marketing. This is out in his new book. And it says, real marketing is when you're not selling a single thing. You're ultimately just creating an experience. And I think that that's really important for everyone to understand. The more you're able to market yourself, because as Ryan said, everything is marketing, but you do it in a non-sales way. Whether you're promoting exclusivity or whether you're promoting customer service second to none, that is what's going to set you apart, not the special and not the sale. And regardless of your political affiliations or anything like that, I think I've been closing off a lot of my talks lately with this, which is be different, be unique, and believe in something. Nike did it. They stood up for something. And it was a very calculated risk on their end. And again, I don't really care what you believe in, but stand up for you. Stand up for what makes you special and different. That will transcend your marketing. And ultimately, the patients will choose you because of you. So that concludes my time on this. I really hope we have some questions afterwards. I know that this will go out, but here's my email if you have any questions or want this slide deck or you don't get the follow-up. At this point, I'm going to send it back to TK. So,
wow, that was really good, Sam. We don't have any questions in yet, but if you have any questions, please submit them through the questions tab. I did come up with a few that I'll be asking just to get the ball rolling. And if it's okay with Sam and Ryan, I will include their contact info in the follow-up email in case they want someone wants to contact you for slides or any questions about the presentations.
Certainly.
Absolutely.
All right. So I really enjoyed both y'all's courses, and I live in Orlando, so when we were talking about service, Ryan, I always think of Disney World, and every year they raise their prices. I think it's like over $130 now to go for a single day pass, and it's funny to me how they're able to do that, and I think it's because they focus on service so much and the experience. So do you have any comments about that or?
Yeah, and there's a couple of great stories there, and I think this actually ties in really well with Sam's point as well, which is that they're engineering an experience, and the experience is the marketing, right? It's the thing that drives it drives and amplifies word of mouth, because we come back and we tell these great stories. There's some amazing. The Disney Institute is one of those places where you can go to learn about exceptional service, and there's a bit of lore and a story that they tell about how, and I believe it's actually out of the original, the Anaheim Park.
Mm-hmm.
They noticed that, and it was a member of their parking team noticed a problem years ago. And it was that, families, they come in, they're bright, they're happy, the kids are smiling, the car pulls in, they unload everybody, they strap the kids in the strollers, they go into the park, and then the end of the day comes. And the kids are exhausted, Billy's screaming because he's hungry, dad's tired, and the family's marching through the parking lot, and nobody can remember where the car is, right? Because if you've never been there, the parking lot is the size of like 15 football fields. And one of the members of their parking team, who was adhering to some of their values as it relates to service, which is to find ways to solve the problems of the people in the park, he observed that there was such a steady procession of people into the park that if you knew when you arrived, within 15 minutes, they could actually tell you, based on watching the traffic patterns from the morning, which row or rows you were most likely in, during it down to one or two. So they now have systems in place where, upon your arrival, if you their apps now do this, but years ago, before there was an app present, if you could just remember, we arrived at approximately 7 a.m. in the park. Oh, perfect. Well, you're going to be between row H and row J. Let's go ahead and jump in this cart with me. We're gonna do a quick round through the parking lot and help you find that car real quickly. And it took what would have been a horrible end to the day, what would have compromised the memorable experience, and it recovered that potential lost service moment. Interestingly, one of my favorite people in the industry, Marie Olson, we just had her speak at one of our client events, and she talked about how one of the two most common times when we let our patients down, I'll pause for effect, is the checkout, right? And so looking at the entry and the exit of that patient experience is often overlooked. So I think those are times where we need to pull back and say, okay, we're putting energy, we're putting attention here, and we're doing things like, gosh, on our walk in, is the parking lot clean? Is our signage clear? Can you find our practice if you've never been here before? And looking at it with those fresh and inspired eyes can be really powerful for a clinic.
Yeah, I'd have to completely agree with you. Sam, do you have any comments on the subject?
No, except I hate that parking lot because I live 15 minutes away from it. Otherwise, I mean, Ryan absolutely nailed that on the head. There's nothing else to add to that. That's brilliant.
So Sam, I do see a lot of interesting practices on social media, both from practices and doctors and the general public. What is your rebuttal to a practice that is posting this much contact or thinks they need to follow 5,000 accounts, then unfollow them to give followers?
So yeah, I mean, this is something that we hear a lot, and traditionally, whether it's social media or SEO or digital marketing as a whole, the very first thing I ever do when I'm talking to a practice is I ask them why. Why are you doing what it is that you think you're doing? Why are you posting this much content? Why are you adding all these followers and then trying to take them off? And usually it's, I've been taught this, I've been trained this, I heard this in a talk, but usually it boils down to, this is old information, this is old things that you've learned from essentially the water cooler, whether it be other people in the industry or your friends or your family. And then they lose sight of the focus of why it is that they're actually doing this. Like, why are you even on social media? And it's very funny, I ask this question a lot, or I'll even ask it about, SEO or blogging. Why are you spending your time blogging? And after 3 or 4 questions of why, like I am a 3-year-old, they get a little frustrated with me. But at the end of the day, it comes down to, well, I want more patience. And it's like, okay, you want more patience. Let's start there. Now that we know that that is where you want to go with this, how do we actually do that? Now, instead of hearing all of these things and trying to beat the algorithm that you think you're smarter than, which you are not, let's say, okay, if I were a real patient, how would I want to engage with the practice? What is the type of content I am looking for? What is interesting, enthralling, captivating to me? Because again, if you're marketing yourself properly, and I think Ryan will attest to this, the type of patient that chooses you is going to resemble you in some cases in terms of what you find to be most important and how you present yourself to that market. So create interesting and compelling and unique content, and pretty much all of this other stuff fixes itself. You no longer have the need to post 5 times a day, and you're like, no, that doesn't make any logical sense. I don't know why I'm doing that. You don't write a blog that's trash because you're like, wait, I wouldn't read this. Why am I doing this anymore? When you start asking these types of questions and start really getting to the heart of it, I think that it's an easy way to dissuade people and break their old habits that they've been indoctrinated in since 2012 and 2010 and even before. For probably sometimes longer than Ryan and I have even been at some of these shows. I heard a talk back in 1996, and it's like, okay, well that's great, but it's about to be 2019. We need to change up
But
the way
I
you're
think,
thinking
Sam,
about
too,
this.
sometimes the even more insidious thing, Sam, can be when we see clinics that observe a behavior from someone they perceive as a winner, as being successful at something, but they don't necessarily see the full picture or understand that clinic's history or why, and they take a piece of marketing or communication solution out of context and start doing a lot of one thing or the wrong thing or an incomplete thing. And so I think your advice to really pull back and say, well, let me think about understand why I'm doing this, and and then say, well, what is a complete solution, and what does excellence look like if I'm going to be active in this area? That's the thing that ultimately gets clinic results. I think the thing that where clinics sabotage themselves over and over again is that partial or incomplete adoption of a solution or activity that they don't fully understand, which then, of course, obviously isn't going to result in any kind of successful outcome.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, when you get people that are all of a sudden seeing one thing over here in social media, but don't understand how it's playing to the rest of their digital marketing, and doesn't understand how it applies to the rest of their website and this and that, and they're only trying to do one thing, really, it can really sabotage them.
So we did have a couple questions pop in. The first one, I'll give each of you a chance to respond. We are pretty close on time, so try to keep it short if you can. So one question is, when I hear a patient gushing about their results, I ask if they would help other patients by telling their story on RealSelf or Google. They say they would love to, but ultimately don't. Do you have any processes or strategies to improve the Google or RealSelf reviews? And we'll start with you, Ryan.
Yeah, and I think Sam probably issues similar advice. Following on with that recommendation with some kind of tool. It can be a text message that links to a web page with ready links to your preferred review sites. It can be a printed form that they can leave with holding in their hand. But the combination of a request and then some kind of tool or reminder for the patient seems to be the thing today that we see netting the best results for review deposition. But I always remind clinics, it's a numbers game, and sometimes people are just going to get busy and they're not going to do it. So rather than be discouraged, you need to be inspired to ask everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that the only thing I have to add to that, which I think is just, I mean, it's the most sound and logical advice, is give them a reason and incentivize them to leave you a review. And by no means am I talking about financial consideration at all. What I'm saying is, you know what, your review should be based on the excellent service that you've had here and your excellent outcome. This is the way that I market. And if you don't share this, I will not be able to share with other potential patients that might be looking for the similar results and the similar outcomes. They won't know to come and see me for that, and potentially they will go elsewhere. So if you get the chance, and I know you're so busy at what it is that you do, but that review is not only important to me, but it's important to the person just like you before they walk through my door.
I totally agree. That's great advice. One last question quickly. This is I'm going to start with you, Sam. How do I overcome that most of my patients are overly private and don't prefer to be associated with my surgery practice on social media? Or how do I get more followers when most of my patients are overly private?
Yeah, and that's especially the case when you're dealing with an older generation and facial plastic surgeons
Facial
in
plastics.
general, as opposed to a general plastic surgeon or someone that is potentially working primarily in breast or body. They're going to struggle with this a little bit more. It's not as socially accepted to have someone share about their facelift. It's not as socially accepted to talk about their rhino work, things like that. Although those trends are changing. Some of the barometers of success that you should be looking for is really followers and the right type of followers from the right demographics. Your engagement might still be low, and that's okay. As long as you're getting an audience. And sometimes it's just important to to speak and to provide education to that audience and not necessarily use the barometer of, oh, I do need unrealistic insights in terms of them liking and them commenting and this and that. Their engagement shouldn't be the only barometer for success for your social media, because you do know that they're doing that. But I will say, if you encourage your patients and say, hey, you should be proud of your result, you should be proud in all of this, and that pride will transform to social media. Ryan, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll say today, I just don't see that as such a big problem, except in some facial plastic surgery clinics where there's a reluctance on the part of that older patient audience. And my thing is, like, don't fight that, and recognize that for the success and future of your clinic in general, you do need to be looking at building a younger patient audience. These are going to be patients who are coming in for lip injections, rhinoplasty, chin and cheek, and that's going to be good for you and for the health and future of your clinic to have a multi-generational practice. And those patients are not going to think twice about connecting with you on social media. The other thing, and it's a little bit, I realize that for most of the folks on this call, price-based promotions are probably not a big part of what you do. Things like sales specials, periodic discounts, and contests. But if they are, you're going to have a natural advantage because you can use those as levers to encourage people to connect with you on social media when you're running those specials and contests out through those social channels.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, before I wrap it up, I'll ask for Ryan, any final thoughts? 60 seconds.
Yeah, I'm just going to leave it at this. I want to encourage everybody on the call today, if you have call tracking, my guess is in the last 60, 90 days, you haven't listened to any of your calls. So get off your duff and go and listen. Talk to your agency partner and say, how do I get in there? How do I listen to some of those calls? And I think you'll be startled by what you hear. Hopefully positively. I think maybe not so much. And look at that not as an opportunity to punish the team, but to identify where there's opportunities for training and development that is going to make that very first touch point, the call, which is so important, to make it better. If you don't have call tracking, talk to your agency partner today. We all offer it as a service, and get site-wide call tracking enabled. So not only will you get a count of the calls coming off your website, but you'll have that ability within a couple days to go back, listen to some of those calls, and actually focus on where and how you're going to enhance that initial experience.
I have to agree with you on tracking, on listening to the calls. And Sam, any last thoughts to leave the audience with?
Yeah, I would say that from my perspective, one of the things that you should do is even if you're not active in social media, go through your own social accounts periodically and make sure that the content that is on there resonates with you. For God's sake, if you're doing content syndication by any means, or if you're getting generic content proliferated over multiple accounts, really look at what the value of that is. If any of your answers tend to boil down to, well, I'm doing it because I think that I should, or, my daughter or my friend or whomever told me that I need to be on social media, even though it's not something I actively use, that is not the reason why you should be doing anything. And ultimately, you're doing yourself a disservice. So, my recommendation to you is don't do this if you're not going to be willing to commit to providing something quality. You, as a provider of plastic surgery, have dedicated your life to doing things on a level of quality unsurpassed by others. Why would you allow this to be anything different? Whether that's your social media, your website, your SEO, your blogs, your anything. Have that same level of commitment to excellence in what you're doing as you do with someone who's on your operating table.
That was great. That's great, Sam. I want to thank everyone for coming to the webinar today. Don't forget to register for the symposium next year. There's the webinar discount code for $75 off that will be sent as a follow-up through this email. I want to thank today's presenters. Ryan, thank you. Sam, thank you. And please register and join us in New Orleans. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Appreciate it.